to the Dynamic Duel podcast, where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in crossover battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And this episode, our main event is Azrael versus Blade.
Yeah, we know that we wanted to review Blade in our next episode with, the countdown to the Black Panther movie coming out. We thought it would be a good idea to kind of give homage to, the character that kind of not only started the whole modern wave of superhero films, but also was, one of the first leading black superhero characters to star in a film.
Yeah. And, pitting him against Azrael, I don't think most people would have thought of this match.
It was so hard. I spent the longest time trying to convince you that Constantine was the best matchup for Blade.
The worst match ever. There's no way Blade would stand. Blade would not even touch Constantine.
If you say so. I disagree with that. But I think I ended up Googling DC superheroes that carry swords or something like that.
Yeah.
And I saw a cool image of Azrael carrying a sword. So I was like, oh, that might work.
I hadn't even thought of Azrael.
And Azrael kind of has a pseudo supernatural, more religious background.
Yeah.
So it's kind of comparable. And because Blade is a supernatural hero. So I think it works.
Yeah. I mean, Azrael, he's strong and faster than usual. He's superhuman is what I'm saying, along with the Blade.
Yeah. So,
Blade was always this really, really unique character. And so when you suggested Azrael, I was like, why didn't I think of that? So that's what we're doing.
I think we're also thinking Zariel for a while, but it was really hard to get information on him. Zariel, the angel who used Zariel? How do you say it?
I say Azrael.
He was an angel character that was featured in the Justice League of America during Grant Morrison's run. I thought that might be a good matchup too, but I like this one better.
Dude, Azrael would have stomped Blade. Not even a good match.
All right, if you say so, man, I disagree. But
all right. Before we get into the match, we like to do the news breakdown. There's no DC news.
Good.
This episode sucks.
That's the way I like it. All Marvel, all the time.
So Logan gets an Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Wonder Woman gets a snub. We'll be talking about that. Hans Zimmer comes out of retirement to score X-Men Dark Phoenix.
That's cool.
There's a new set photo and video that gives us our first look at Captain Marvel. Brie Larson as Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
There's a ton of internet outrage. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into that. And that's pretty much all the news there is. It's kind of a slow news week.
A little bit. It's not too bad for Marvel.
But up next, let's talk about the No Prize.
Yeah, so last week, our question of the week was, which Marvel or DC television series do you think had the strongest pilot episode? And
no one chose my favorite.
No one. Well, actually, a few people chose my favorite, but I think the most interesting answer and the winner of the No Prize for this week is John Spees, who gave the answer. He said, I think the X-Men animated series had the best pilot.
Yeah, I didn't even consider any animated series.
No,
when I was thinking about this question.
But I recently watched the X-Men animated series again because we did a guest spot on John's podcast, which is the Blast from Our Past podcast, which is an amazing show that they put on. If you haven't listened to it yet,
super nostalgia feels.
Yeah, check out the Blast from Our Past podcast. They talk about all the cool stuff that we enjoyed as kids in the early 90s and late 80s. So, but I rewatched the X-Men animated cartoon, and that pilot episode did such a good job of setting up the themes of the show. It wasn't afraid to get deep, but it had tremendous action. And I think it did a great job introducing these iconic characters in a way that made it so palatable to the mainstream audience. That show was heavily inspired by the early 90s Jim Lee and Claremont run.
Yeah.
I think that was a great answer. It's definitely one of the strongest pilots that has ever been produced.
Yeah. So John will be getting the No Prize. But what was your favorite pilot?
I think my answer to this question, I think everybody who has listened to this podcast for a while knows that I'm a huge fan of the Legion TV show that came out early last year. And I think that pilot episode drew me in a way that nothing else did. I was so concerned that the Legion show was going to be such a radical departure from the comics, and it was, but it made it so interesting that I was compelled to keep watching. And I just loved every episode as much as the first, almost. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that has to be my answer.
I've seen the pilot. It was good. But I didn't like it as much as I liked Smallville's pilot.
Smallville had a great pilot back in the day. That was the one that ended with like the tornado in the cornfield, and they like strung him up like a scarecrow with the kryptonite necklace, and they had the S painted on the chest.
But just like seeing Clark Kent and Lex Luthor, and like I grew up with, I was a freshman when Smallville came out, so like when Clark became a sophomore, and I was growing along with him, so I was the perfect age for that show.
It was a good one. I mean, I think I stopped watching after the second or third season because it kind of became apparent that they were never going to show him become Superman. And the way that show ended,
and they never really did.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
I think I stopped after like season 5. I stuck with it for a while.
I just, like, every episode, I just wanted, like, after the third season, I was like, just shut up, Lana.
I just liked the concept of it. Like, it was like, you know, the meteorites coming with Superman to Earth, the kryptonite meteorites, and the radiation from those creating weekly
Villain of the
weeks. It was, you know, it may not work now, but it totally worked on me then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it had good action too, good special effects.
Yeah.
A great kind of portrayal of the powers that he did have, like with the X-ray vision and the heat vision and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was a good show for a while.
Yeah.
And then it sucked.
I don't know. I stopped watching.
I have to agree. Great pilot episode for sure.
Yeah.
I know I was hooked on that one too. And I'm not even a DC guy, so that's a testament to how good it was.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be asking another question later on in the show during our news segment. So keep an eye out for that if you want to win that note prize for our next episode.
Yep.
So on to the news segment. Logan. No, the real news here is that Wonder Woman was snubbed.
No, I think the real news is that Logan is the first comic book movie to be nominated for the Best Adapted Screenplay award. And so it's going to go to, I think James Mangold wrote the script. Let me look this up. Yeah. He also co-wrote it with writers named Scott Frank and Michael Green. So if they win, it would mean so much to the comic book genre, I think, as a whole.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a technical award or like a makeup award like Suicide Squad won.
Right.
It's a testament to how strong the story was.
Right. Honestly, this is the one category of Oscars that I've always wanted a comic book film to be nominated and to win.
Besides Best Picture?
Well, besides Best Picture. I think the biggest award a comic book film has really won was, Best Supporting Actor for Heath Ledger. That's definitely I think the most prestigious. But again, that's not really that's commenting on someone's performance rather than like the source material and giving legitimacy to the source material
or the adapted material.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think this, if it wins, it could mean so much because I feel like there's a slight sense of superhero fatigue out there. Especially, I felt it a lot like around when Justice League was just released. And I like when people come down on superhero movies, one of their criticisms is that maybe there's too many of these being made or something like that. Mm-hmm. So good superhero movies can only, benefit the genre as a whole. And especially when they win awards, that can only mean positive things. And I think that if it wins an award, we'll see maybe more movies being made like Logan in the future.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, what is it going up against?
Oh, that's a good question. It's going up against adapted screenplay. Let's see. Call Me by Your Name.
Don't know it.
The Disaster Artist.
Oh, know that.
Molly's Game.
Sort of know that. I've heard of
that
it.
one was written by Aaron Sorkin. I heard that was really good. And the last one was Mudbound. So, I'd probably give Logan the number 2 seed in this list. Mm-hmm. It might go to Molly's Game, which would suck because, Aaron Sorkin's really good. But he's won Academy Awards before, so it would be cool to see these guys win.
You know what the sucky thing is, though? Even if it wins this award, what can they do with that? Because, Disney is about to own those characters now. Plus, Logan is dead. You can't really, take that and run with it into, a sequel. I'm sure, someone really would want to. Especially with, because it's in a franchise.
Well, unless Marvel wants to hire Mangold to do an X-Men film, which I think would be fantastic. I think about how the X-Men are going to go into the Marvel Cinematic Universe all the time. I dream about that. And I was actually, this is a kind of a tangent off the main topic, but I was thinking in the shower the other day, how are they going to introduce mutants into the MCU?
Have they never been mentioned before?
Right. And I kind of came up with a theory that I don't know if has been already come up somewhere else. It probably has. But I was thinking, what if mutants have been around in the MCU this entire time? They were there for the Battle of New York with the Avengers and everything like that. But the reason that nobody remembers them is because Professor X is like neuralizing them, like with Cerebro, kind of like in Men in Black. How like
what?
Like how Men in Black you can like make people forget with the neuralizer. Like, what if Professor X is doing something like that?
He's just mind wiping everybody.
Using Cerebro. He's like, and that's how he keeps the mutants' anonymity is by
keeping them safe.
Wait,
so the whole world doesn't know that mutants exist,
right? Yeah, I think it would be cool if mutants did already exist in the MCU, but
no one knew about them.
People would just keep getting their mind wiped regarding the mutation and everything like that. And then
that would
maybe
almost make Professor X a villain.
Yeah, but he's done shady things like that in the past before, you know? So I think it's not outside of his character. And then maybe when they're introduced into the MCU, Professor X is no longer able to hide the existence of mutants because Magneto like launches like an offensive against mankind or something.
Destroy Cerebro or something like that.
Or something like that, yeah.
That's not a bad theory. I'm trying to think of any other way it could be done. Nope, that's the only acceptable way it could be done.
I think it's a great way to kind of establish them in the history of the MCU, but also introduce them as new characters.
Huh.
So we'll see if they end up going that route. But I just thought about that in the shower, and I was like, oh, I got to talk about that in the podcast. But regarding Logan, I was a little bit disappointed that the film wasn't nominated for Best Picture, because to me, it was like among my favorite films of last year. Not just because it was a Marvel film or because it was a superhero film, but because it was such a good story.
I know that after the Dark Knight was nominated or wasn't nominated for Best Picture, like the Academy increased the number of nominees. I can't remember. I think they went backwards. I could totally be making that up. But I remember like I was like checking out some tweets about this, and they're like, oh, what, you couldn't extend the list again to include Logan? Or,
yeah.
You know.
Well, it just feels like the industry has somewhat of not a vendetta, but the fact that Logan didn't get nominated for Best Picture, and the fact that Wonder Woman didn't receive any nominations when it was recognized by
the PGA,
you know, the American Film Institute and everything as well.
Yeah,
is just a little bit weird.
It seems like the AFI and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and they didn't agree this year.
No, not really. I think it's almost like Hollywood is trying to send a message to everybody that they don't want more superhero films being made, because it doesn't matter how good you make them, because we're not going to recognize them anyway. It sucks, because I don't foresee any movies this year coming out that are like more impactful than Logan.
Maybe Aquaman.
Maybe no, definitely not Aquaman.
You don't know.
I was gonna say maybe maybe Infinity War. I don't know.
I doubt it.
We'll see. So you're feeling bad about Wonder Woman though?
Heck yeah, dude.
Okay, that's all that matters to me. Moving on to the next news
item. It should have been
item.
nominated for Best Director.
What?
Should have been nominated for Best Actress. Should have been nominated for Best Picture. Should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Should have been nominated for Best Screenplay. Should have been nominated for...
This is not the Jonathan Fantasy Awards. This is the Academy Awards.
Dude, it should have been nominated in each one of those categories.
I don't think so, man. All right, moving on to the next bit of news. Hans Zimmer, who has apparently stated before that he was not going to score any more superhero films.
Yeah.
He's going to score X-Men Dark Phoenix.
So apparently he's only done with DC films. Thanks a lot, Hans Zimmer. What the fuck?
I think he's done great work on Man of Steel and, of course, the Dark Knight trilogy. So this is great news for X-Men, because I don't think that they've had a particularly strong score in any of their films. Maybe X-Men 2. I think John Ottman's score in X-Men 2 was pretty well done. It was like dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah,
dun.
yeah.
But and they kind of reused those themes in both Days of Future Past and X-Men Apocalypse, and the other films just weren't that memorable.
Yeah, no, I didn't like the score at all for X-Men Apocalypse.
No. Yeah, so the fact that it's going to at least have more memorable music, it registers more on my radar a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could listen to the Man of Steel soundtrack all day. All day. Just have headphones on and just listen to that all day. It's so good. It's really good.
I thought the Dark Knight score was better.
What he did with Batman was good too. I don't know. Hans Zimmer, to me, right now, is like the best composer. And I know like a lot of people would argue John Williams, because he's definitely had like the most like iconic and most memorable scores.
Yeah.
But to me, like technical wise, I think I have to give it to Hans Zimmer.
He's done more interesting things, I think, than John Williams. John Williams' scores are definitely memorable and classic, but it seems like Hans Zimmer is slightly more experimental and
Yeah.
I don't know. It appeals to me in a more unique way.
Yeah. This is great news for the X-Men franchise. But I mean, again, it's like, are you going to be able to reuse those themes?
I think I would not want them to, because I think if you're watching the new MCU X-Men, you're going to associate those themes, especially if they're memorable Hans Zimmer themes, to the old shitty X-Men universe.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right, moving on to the next set of news. This is probably the biggest news item of the week. We got our first glimpse through a series of set photos of Brie Larson suited up in her Captain Marvel superhero costume. It immediately caught me off guard when I saw these.
Yeah. I texted it to you.
But it only took me like at least 10 seconds to like readjust to like, oh, that's the Kree uniform.
Yeah. I remember I texted you the photo and your response was, what?
What's that? I mean, we've all seen the concept art that was released during Comic-Con last year that shows that she will have the costume in her traditional colors of red and blue and with the gold Hala star in the center. So this, like, if you're familiar with the comics, when Mar-Vell first came to Earth, and he's the character that mentored and became the romantic interest of Carol Danvers.
It's going to be Jude Law in the movie.
Jude Law, yes. His costume was a green Kree army uniform. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure that she's wearing his suit, or not his suit specifically, but wearing that same thing.
Yeah.
So this may be before she like customizes it to not resemble a Kree outfit anymore and more of her own thing.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So the design itself is a little interesting. It does have a few more embellishments than I would have thought it would have. It looks one way in concept art, but in the photo, it doesn't quite fit nearly as well as it should, which at first made me think that she was wearing his suit.
Oh.
But there's like an abundance of embellishments, like a few rivets, some piping, kind of.
I thought, I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one who thought it didn't fit her that well. I mean, not that it needs to be skin tight, but like there's a sizable amount of fabric in the crotch area that is just like, what is that just dangling there
so she
for?
she could do her high kicks, I guess.
But
like the design of like where the knee pads are, well, they're not actually knee pads to the top of the shin pads, but they look like knee pads. So it makes it look like her legs are like super tiny and everything. It's not the most flattering design. I have to say I like the top half more than I like the bottom half. Like if you just kind of cover up the bottom half, yeah, that looks pretty good. And then you cover up the top half and you just look at the bottom and it's like, what is happening? But I think with the corrected colors, I think that'll be fine.
Yeah, because we know that she's appearing in Infinity War. And I wouldn't be surprised if, she has her normal suit colors in that movie. But for this movie, maybe she has green all the way up until almost the end. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, well, because her movie will be her origin story.
Right.
There was a brief little set video as well that was released along with these photos, and it didn't really reveal much. No. So it didn't go into spoiler territory, but we did see a man approach her somewhat threateningly, and then she like grabs his hand and like crushes it, and he like winces and falls to his knees in pain. Not sure what's going on there, but I thought that was pretty interesting. It seems like
I think she's like has a big smile afterward. I don't know if that's just Brie Larson's reaction to like the performance, or if it's actually part of the script
or part of the character.
Yeah,
like kind of discovering her powers or something like that.
Yeah, I have to say the first thing I thought of when I saw this suit was, for a studio that's trying to distance itself, like origin-wise, from Green Lantern. This really reminded me of like a Green Lantern suit. It was like, if you wanted to do that, this wasn't the best way to do that at all. It's almost like a Green Lantern uniform.
One of the early thoughts that I had as well was that the suit was green because they were going to animate part of it, like a green screen kind of effect. But then I was like, no, that's too Green Lantern. They wouldn't do that. But you never know, they might. But yeah, that's actually an apt criticism, is that if they're not animating over it, it somewhat resembles a Green Lantern suit. And if they are animating over it, then it somewhat resembles the Green Lantern suit from the 2011 Green Lantern movie.
You know what it really reminded me of? Do you know the character Jade, Alan Scott's daughter?
Yes.
Alan Scott is the first Green Lantern. She has like that same like Hollister kind of symbol on hers. That's what it reminded me of.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Anything
I think that's
else?
all I have to say about that.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing more set photos as, they're taken.
I'm interested in seeing more different looks at the costume, essentially.
And seeing the costume in its proper color.
Right.
That'll be cool.
This kind of brings us to our question of the week.
The question for this episode is, speaking of costumes, who, in your opinion, has had the best adapted live-action costume design out of all the Marvel and DC films? So go ahead and write your answer into us by searching for us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Just do a search for Dynamic Duel Podcast and you'll find us.
Yeah.
Or you can email us your answer at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll go ahead and pick our favorite answer and draw them a Dynamic Duel No Prize with their name on it that we post to our social media accounts.
Yeah. If anyone says Green Lantern, they will immediately be blocked.
They will not only be disqualified from winning the No Prize, they will be banished from our social media accounts. Actually, you know what? I didn't hate the Green Lantern costume, so
It made sense to me the way they approached it, because if you're going to create like this costume that's made of like, a green construct, a green mental construct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it is made of like a CG energy. I don't know.
All right, yeah. Let us know who you guys think had the best superhero costume. And with all that news out of the way, let's go ahead and get into our Azrael versus Blade speculation.
All right, Azrael versus Blade.
The fight of the century.
Maybe. Probably not.
Nah, probably not. I mean, it's a good fight. I do think I'm interested in seeing how this one will pan out. I like both of these characters. I know very little about Azrael, so I'm interested in learning about him from you and seeing what makes him so cool. Because despite only sticking around as the replacement for Batman for, I don't know, like a year, maybe less than that, he still kind of shows up every now and then in like the nerd consciousness.
Yeah.
So he's an interesting character for sure.
Admittedly, I didn't know too much about him either. So this was a lot of fun research. I think he would have been a great matchup for Moon Knight.
Really?
Yeah. Once I get down into his profile description, they both have, they're both, kind of superhuman. They both have like multiple personalities in a way. They both, they're both hooded figures.
Yeah.
Who sometimes wear white, I guess.
Well, you never know. Eventually, maybe way down the line, a few years from now, we may get to the Azrael versus Moon Knight match. That's actually a good idea. So
write it down. We're gonna forget. So if you haven't listened to one of our Duel episodes before, the way this works is we run 1,000 spreadsheet battle simulations, the figures from which are extrapolated from stat sheets that we record. We do the simulations 1,000 times, which I think is sort of a big thing for us.
It's an accurate way to do it, to get a good answer.
Because I feel like a lot of other people who do something similar in a way, that they only do one match. And the thing is that there's so many different ways for characters when they're fighting to win or lose. You have to do it so many times to get, like an accurate
in our
result,
simulations.
I think.
In our simulations, no character wins like 100% of the time.
No.
So I always thought that was pretty neat. So it feels very accurate. We simulate 1,000 times. We get the numbers from the stats that we compile from the official Marvel Power Rankings, as well as a few other stats that we determine ourselves.
Yeah, we extrapolate the DC stats from those Power Rankings.
Yes.
It's math. It's no bias. There's no fan votes. Like the comic from the 90s where the winners were decided by votes.
Oh yeah, that was bullshit.
Lobo would have never lost to Wolverine. That's all I'm saying. So it's nothing like that. It's science.
Yeah,
it's science.
Yeah, and before we do the 1,000 simulations, before we run those numbers in the spreadsheet, we like to go over the profiles and the powers of each of the contestants involved in the match, as well as speculate on how we think at least one of those matchups would kind of play out.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah.
We don't talk about environment, though. I think that's one of the things that's also unique is you can't really record environmental stats because it's so variable. One character can win one environment and not in another, so it's just we don't do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But before the speculation, we do the profile breakdowns. So I think it's your turn to start.
Yeah, yep. I'll go ahead and talk about Blade. All right, so in 1929 London, a pregnant prostitute named Tara Brooks summoned a doctor named Deacon Frost to her brothel to assist with severe labor complications. Frost was actually a vampire who feasted on her blood as she gave birth. And in doing so, the vampire accidentally passed on certain enzymes from his saliva through Tara's bloodstream into the child that made him immune to the effects of a vampire bite and gave him an attunement for sensing the supernatural and a lengthened lifespan.
It gave him all of his strengths but none of his weaknesses.
No, it just gave him those 3 powers.
Oh.
So it essentially turned the child into what's called a Dhampir, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is someone who has been touched but not converted by a vampire. The other women of the brothel were able to drive Frost away before he could kill the child as well, and they named the baby Eric Brooks, and he grew up to be the vampire hunter known as Blade.
Wait, that's Blade's real name?
Eric Brooks, yes.
Blade has a real name?
Yeah.
That's all. I did not expect Eric Brooks.
It's not Wesley Snipes.
I was thinking Wesley Snipes or something cool like that.
Yeah. So as a teenager, Eric was an orphan living on the streets when he first happened upon a group of vampires attacking an older man named Jamal Afari. He helped fight them off and saved the man's life. Afari was actually a lifelong vampire hunter who realized that Eric's special immunity made him ideal for hunting vampires, so he took him under his wing and taught him everything he knew. Eric's main motivation in learning how to kill vampires was to avenge his mother's death by killing the vampire responsible. He called himself Blade after his preferred vampire killing tools. He used these like teak wooden knives, throwing knives, to kill vampires. So that was his goal. He was unable to find Deacon Frost, however, but he ended up teaming up with a small group of vampire hunters to hunt the ruler and most powerful of all vampires, Dracula. The group succeeded in staking Dracula's heart, but his servants were able to resurrect him, and he got revenge by killing the group, except for Blade. So he persisted in his fight against Dracula with a new team of hunters that included Quincy Harker and Rachel Van Helsing, who were the descendants of the characters from Bram Stoker's Dracula novel. Over the years, they killed Dracula multiple times, but he kept getting resurrected by his servants and his brides. After a while, Blade was probably just like, fuck this shit, and decided to return to his original mission of avenging his mother. So to track Deacon Frost, he teamed up with Hannibal King, who was a detective that was turned into a vampire, and he was played by Ryan Reynolds in the Blade Trinity movie.
That's right.
Together, they uncovered a plot by Frost to usurp the title of Lord of the Vampires from Dracula. They battled an army of Frost vampires, but ended up killing him. A few years later, Blade teamed up with Doctor Strange, Hannibal King, and Frank Drake. Frank Drake, he's like an inventor dude with a Ghostbuster proton pack. It was an energy gun that could affect supernatural entities. I thought he was the lamest thing ever. But they teamed up with Ghost Rider to fight and defeat Lilith, who is the mother of all demons, and her offspring called the Lilin. So Blade continued his mission to rid the world of vampires, which brought him to New York to stop his former ally Morbius, who was being controlled by another vampire at the time. He teamed up with Spider-Man for the fight, but managed to get bitten by Morbius. Blade had been bitten by vampires before, but he's immune to any effects. That's one of his natural abilities. Morbius, however,
he's not a real vampire.
He was a different sort of vampire, like not one turned by supernatural means. Morbius is like a pseudo-vampire created by scientific means when he tried to cure himself of a blood disorder using the genetic material of vampire
it's more like
bats.
Genetic manipulation than...
Yeah, so he's like part vampire bat, basically. But so when he bit Blade, it turned him to a daywalker, meaning he got all of the powers of a traditional vampire and none of their weaknesses, except for the thirst for blood. He got the thirst.
Right.
But Spider-Man was able to fashion a serum for both Blade and Morbius to satiate their thirst, and they would both take it regularly.
Spider-Man did that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Blade eventually met his father, Lucas Cross, who was still alive, and coincidentally turned into a vampire a long time ago. He captured Blade and told him about a prophecy he was to fulfill that results in all vampires getting their souls restored. So Cross tried to get Blade to drink the blood of a young girl, as one of the conditions of the prophecy was that he had to drink the blood of a virgin. Blade ended up escaping, but he ended up fulfilling that part of the prophecy when he drank the blood of his enemy Draconis, who it turns out was a virgin. But he drank his blood as a means to drain his powers. So he ends up fulfilling that part of the prophecy, and then he's abducted again by his father and taken to Dracula's castle to complete the final part of the prophecy. So it turns out that Cross had been tricked by Dracula into thinking that the prophecy ritual would restore all vampire souls, but what it did instead was resurrect every vampire that had ever died.
Oh, shit.
Effectively resetting Blade's mission back to 0.
Oh, shit.
That's pretty much it for his backstory highlights. Recently, he helped the X-Men fight off an invasion of their island haven, though not before Jubilee was bitten and turned into a vampire.
So dumb.
Yeah. And Blade was also a member of Luke Cage's Avengers team called the Mighty Avengers for a while. As far as powers go, his vampire bite immunity, his long lifespan, and his ability to sense supernatural creatures, those were all acquired at birth during Deacon Frost's attack on his mother. His later vampire abilities came from Morbius's unique bite that gave him the more traditional powers of vampire, although I've never seen him turn into a bat, and I've never seen him like hypnotize people. So it's more like the physical stuff. So Blade has enhanced strength. He can lift about 1 ton. He has superhuman speed, especially in fast bursts over short distances, which he can cover in almost an instant. He has enhanced agility, reflexes, stamina, and durability. He has an accelerated healing ability that we saw in the movie as well. Not quite as good as Wolverine's, but still pretty good.
I remember seeing this image of him fighting Wolverine, and like Wolverine put his claws right through his head, and Blade was just smiling. So it has to be pretty good.
Yeah, like Wolverine has told him, is like, you know, it's not as fast as mine, but it's almost there. He also has heightened senses, including eyesight, that make him an expert marksman and able to see in complete darkness. He's a master martial artist with expertise in multiple fighting styles and a specialist with bladed weapons, including swords and throwing knives. He also carries automatic machine pistols loaded with hollow point, garlic-filled silver bullets. He does have one weakness. I mentioned it before. It's his thirst for blood. If he doesn't consume blood or his serum for over the course of a couple of weeks, he dies. And that's everything about him. Did you learn anything?
Does he have an English accent?
Yes, he does.
Weird. Weird.
Yep. Instead of, there's worse things out tonight than vampires, he says it more like, there's worse things out than vampires, governor. I can't do an English accent.
So Azrael, skill-wise and ability-wise, he's not too far off from Blade. You'll see. Okay, so we'll Azrael. Jean-Paul Valley was a mild-mannered programming student at Gotham University when one night a masked figure crawled, bleeding, into his apartment. The figure turned out to be his father, to Jean's surprise, and he had been mortally wounded fighting demon worshippers as the assassin/enforcer for a 500-year-old religious secret society known as the Sacred Order of Saint Dumas.
Saint Dumbass?
You're gonna say that.
Sorry.
Saint Dumas. With his father's last dying breaths, he explained to Jean-Paul that with his death, Jean-Paul was the next in line to become the Order's personal angel of death, Azrael. Using resources his father bequeathed him, Jean-Paul traveled to Switzerland and met with the Order of Saint Dumas. There he learned that he was a genetically modified test tube baby, whose DNA had been spliced with animals to make him stronger and faster, among other things. He had also been subtly conditioned and brainwashed unknowingly his whole life.
What kind of animals?
It's not specific.
Okay. So he's like part grizzly bear.
Possibly.
Okay.
So he'd been brainwashed unknowingly his whole life in a process known as the system. Now, under the system's conditioning, Jean was psychologically manipulated not only to serve the will of the Order, but also subconsciously trained to become a violent fighting machine and perfect assassin. And again, this has been going on his whole life through the secret society. He had no idea. Thanks to the system, it wasn't long before Jean-Paul was ready to don the suit of Azrael. Soon after which, he came into odds with Bruce Wayne, who who had traveled to Switzerland while investigating the death of Jean-Paul's father back in Gotham. Bruce's investigation led him to a man named Carlton LaHaye, a former acolyte of the Order of Saint Dumas and believed servant of the demon Bis. Bis? B-I-I-S. Bish. This was the same man who killed Jean-Paul's father. The new Azrael was tasked with killing LaHaye, but instead ended up rescuing Batman while LaHaye seemingly died. Aware of Bruce Wayne's secret identity and inspired by his humanitarian and heroic nature, Jean-Paul rejected the Order and returned home to Gotham with Batman to break the system's conditioning and to help in the crusade against Gotham's criminal element. Breaking free from the system proved extremely difficult. It's impossible. While fighting crime, Azrael would often unknowingly and unwillingly become overaggressive and violent. This would cause him, a great amount of stress and frustration, which would in turn cause him to become more and more aggressive in a vicious cycle.
So he was like a subconscious assassin?
Yeah.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's kind of, I almost think of him like Jason Bourne in a way. Like he didn't know he had all this like abilities until he was, triggered.
Yeah.
Batman had strong hope for Jean-Paul, who had proved his usefulness time and time again, thanks to his physical abilities. When Bane broke Batman's spine, Azrael was chosen to fill in for him to stop Bane's rise to power. After getting his ass handed to him by Bane initially, Azrael developed a new armored bat suit that made him even stronger and faster, with flame-throwing gauntlets also capable of firing high-velocity razor-sharp batarangs. I think most people, when they may not know Jean-Paul, but when they see this suit, they're like, oh, that's who Azrael is. That's who Jean-Paul Valley is.
Yeah, he's like the robotic Batman.
Yeah. The suit was designed by Joe Quesada, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He defeated Bane in their second match, and this confidence boost only led to him becoming even more violent and unhinged. He sealed off all entrances to the Batcave, locking Robin out, wanting nothing to do with him due to Robin's disapproval of Jean-Paul's violent tendencies. After nearly killing the Joker, Jean-Paul lost the trust of many of the Gotham Police Department. Drunk on power, delusions and hallucinations had developed and intensified, eventually to a point where he let a serial killer fall to his death, even though he could have saved him, because he was having visions of Saint Dumas. By this time, Bruce had recovered and confronted Jean-Paul to strip him of the Batman mantle. Using non-violent maneuvers, Bruce stripped Jean-Paul of his bat armor in a both physical and psychological match that also stripped Jean-Paul of his delusions. Mentally broken, Jean-Paul began a rehabilitative quest to take down the Order of Saint Dumas, which he was mostly successful in doing as Azrael.
Was the Order not good though? They were like taking down like demons and stuff. Like why would he take the Order down?
They're not. I wouldn't say they're good or bad. They were a secret society. They go back to the Templars. They were a splinter group of the Templar Knights during the Crusades, and I think it was Dumas. I forget his first name. One of those Templar Knights. He found like the treasure of the Templars and used that to fund his secret society. It's just one that has been like carrying out assassinations for centuries.
So we're supposed to assume that they're also doing shady things.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll believe that.
So Azrael died fighting a resurfaced LaHaye, but he came back as part of the New 52 relaunch, in which he was an agent of the Order of Saint Dumas once again. He now wore armor known as the Suit of Sorrows, an ancient armor forged from the swords of fallen Templar Knights that has something like a mystical artificial intelligence. It's not technical, it's like mystical. It interfaces with the wearer's nervous system, feeding them extrasensory information like enemy weaknesses and such, in addition to reinforcing the system's conditioning. It's been described like having two brains in one body, which is enough to drive any man insane. This includes Jean-Paul. Batman tried to help him by putting him in a new suit designed as a throwback to the Batman armor Jean-Paul wore in the previous continuity. Developed by Lucius Fox's son, Lucas, the new Bat armor had an AI of its own based on Batman's mind that countered the system's more violent mindset. Having deemed the Azrael line a failure, the Order of Saint Dumas unleashed a robotic replacement assassin known as Ascalon, an android with artificial intelligence based on the entire recorded experiences of the Suit of Sorrows. As Azrael and Batman tried to stop Ascalon, it was revealed to Jean-Paul that the leader of the now mostly extinct Order of Saint Dumas was his father, a revelation that sent him into a rage that temporarily overthrew his own programming and caused him to punch right through Ascalon's body, which infected its system with Batman's AI. Due to his genetic modification as a fetus, Azrael has enhanced strength, able to lift several tons, 2 tons.
What?
Yes. As well as increased speed, reflexes, stamina, durability, and the ability to heal several times faster than ordinary. His mental programming, coupled with his innate enhanced senses, and the intelligence system of the Suit of Sorrows, makes him an extremely skilled and tactical fighter, albeit he is prone to visions and hallucinations. Weapons-wise, he wields a sword that he can ignite on flame, 2 gauntlet-mounted blades, which could also set aflame, and a dagger that he keeps strapped to his front scabbard.
Is the dagger special in any way?
It has like a fleur-de-lis on it.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty fancy.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
I don't think there's anything special about it, no.
Okay. It's just a dagger.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's Azrael.
Well, I didn't know anything about him, so that's pretty interesting. I never really liked the Joe Quesada design.
Yeah, it was
the early
weird.
90s when he
It
replaced
had like white
Batman.
sleeves, and it was just weird.
It was bizarre, but I always liked his modern look. He kind of looks like the Assassin's Creed guy, kind of a little bit.
Oh,
But
yeah, if you kind of take like Assassin's Creed and Moon Knight and mix them together, you get Azrael in a way.
yeah. All right, we're gonna go ahead and speculate before we actually do the stats and simulations. We're gonna speculate on how we think this matchup would go. When considering this matchup, we always start the characters 50 yards apart from each other in a non-environment zone where they know that each other are threats, but they don't know anything else about each other.
Right.
They're actually more comparable than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I'm trying
I thought I had this one in the bag, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, 2 tons.
Well, actually, it may even be stronger than that in some instances, but
So can Blade.
Those are essentially just feats of strength. Again, when I'm breaking down the characters, I tend to think of them more as like, what's typical. There's no way Azrael's going out there being able to lift 8 tons, which apparently like he's done something like that before. I just think of that as sloppy writing.
Yeah.
Oh,
good. I agree. Sloppy writing. What weapons does he have? Let's go over a weapons list real
Well,
quick.
I went through them. He has his sword that he's able to ignite. He has his blade gauntlets, which kind of makes him like Wolverine, and he has his dagger. But like in previous incarnations, like he's had multiple suits. He's had like 8 different suits. Maybe not that many, but like he once had like a pretty close to a Batman suit where he did have things like batarangs and stuff like that.
You could assume that he could throw his dagger if you need a projectile.
Sure.
If you want one. Blade, he'll have his throwing stakes. He'll have his 2 automatic pistols.
Mm-hmm. He has guns?
Yeah, he has guns. He has his main sword, and I'll give him his glaive that he throws. It's like a boomerang knife thing.
Yeah.
It's so badass. It was in the movie.
Yeah.
But he's also had it in the comics as well. It's really badass. And what else? I think that's about it. Metal stakes, glaive, sword, guns.
Gauntlet blades, sword, dagger.
Is Azrael's suit bulletproof?
It's armor.
That doesn't answer my question.
It's
made from swords?
Yeah.
Swords of
The Suit of Sorrows is made from...
Is that what he's wearing in this?
Yes. Yeah, he's wearing a Suit of Sorrows.
The one that makes him insane? Okay,
perfect. Well, it also makes him more lethal. So...
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. More lethal than Blade?
It helps him track things, right? So it helps with his agility, and it helps with his marksmanship.
Okay.
And not just marksmanship with weaponry, but also with like his fists and stuff. It's not going to find any weaknesses on Blade because Blade doesn't really have any weaknesses. So that sort of aspect of it is useless in this match.
I think it's going to start off with Blade pulling out his guns. I think that's inevitable. I think in every match, I think Azrael's primary objective is going to have to be to disarm Blade's guns somehow. Mm-hmm. Or evade the bullets long enough until he runs out of ammo. Mm-hmm. Question is, how do you see him doing that? That's because that's how the match is going to start off.
He's fucking running. He is running his ass off.
He's like, shit!
He's running, but he whipped out his sword, and he ignites his sword, and he's dragging his sword on the ground, and he's creating like a wall of fire, and that's gonna sort of act like a screen.
Oh, that's not a bad move.
It's like, yeah, smoke.
Is it hot enough to set the ground on fire?
I've seen like stuff basically explode like when he slices them, just like fire erupting.
Okay. So he creates a screen using his speed, agility, and his flaming sword.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good one. All right, so Blade's gonna, Wesley snipes his gun back into his jacket holster, and then, but he has good vision, he has good hearing and stuff, so he could probably peer through the fire and see where Azrael is, and he's just gonna, like a badass, he's gonna leap over the fire, like, and strike a cool pose, like in midair, and as he lands, he's gonna hurl his glaive right at Azrael.
Okay. So Azrael catches the glaive out of
What?
midair. What?
You can't catch Blade's glaive.
Yeah, he absolutely
So
can.
okay, so he's not.
Can Blade catch his own glaive?
Yes.
Oh, okay, then Azrael can.
So what you're saying is Azrael no longer has a hand.
No.
He goes to catch it, and then it goes right through his hand, and he's like, "Damn it!" Shouldn't have done
How
that.
does Blade catch it?
He's just a badass. Well, he has enhanced senses, so he could time it well as it's coming back to him with his eyesight.
Not only does Azrael have enhanced senses, he also has the Suit of Sorrows.
What the fuck ever, man? Okay, so he catches it. Fine.
He catches it and then he tucks it away for later. Okay? He pulls out his sword.
Okay.
Right?
And then Blade pulls out his sword.
Right. And right as Blade lands.
And then Blade's like, ready to die, motherfucker.
Hey, Jean-Paul, I have no comeback. Jean-Paul he's just silent and cool. So he, yeah.
So they go at each other with the swords.
Yeah. And they sword fight. But Azrael's, sword is better because it's flaming.
Okay.
So yeah, they're sword fighting. I'm pretty sure Azrael is a better sword fighter.
No, I'm pretty sure he's not, because Blade is like the best sword fighter, one of the best sword fighters in the Marvel Universe.
Azrael is one of the best sword fighters in DC.
Okay, so that means they're even.
Okay. Well, they're fucking sword fighting.
It probably looks badass. I
Yeah.
bet.
Yeah.
They're like doing flips and like
Cool shit, like spinning around.
Yeah, like the capoeira kind of stuff.
The cool thing though is that, while Azrael has, his sword in one hand and he's, sword fighting there, he ejects and ignites the wrist-mounted blade on his other arm and just goes at Blade with two blades. He's fighting Blade with blades.
So Blade is fighting off two blades all of a sudden, and he's surprised. He is surprised. He didn't see those gauntlets blades come out. So he reaches into his little hip holster and he flings like 3 silver stakes right at Azrael.
And they bounce right off his armor.
No, right at his face.
They bounce right off his armored face.
He doesn't have an armor.
He does have an armored face.
No, it's like a
cloth? No, it's not.
Or
Look closer. It's metallic.
All right, whatever. Okay. So are you saying that there's nowhere that Blade can strike Azrael with his stakes?
Well, there is. I don't know if you could see them though.
Oh, he sees them.
Azrael, he doesn't wear a helmet. He wears a mask with a hood.
Oh, okay.
So
It's the back of his head. So Blade sees the hood, so he does a flip over, and as he's up, upside down mid flip, he jams a stake into Azrael's head. Right?
except that no, because as he's doing that, Azrael is also moving at the same time. Azrael's constantly moving. He's super agile.
Okay.
And that's when he takes out his dagger and throws it at Blade.
And that's when Blade. Oh, his dagger?
Yeah.
Oh. Blade would knock that out of the air with his sword.
Oh.
Blade's super fast. I don't know if you know this. He's like super fast in short distances. And so now that he knocked the blade out of the way, that's when he pulls his gun back out. And then goes. Grrr.
So that's when Azrael pulls out the glaive that he had been saving and knocks the gun out of Blade's hand with it.
Okay. Oh, yeah, good call there.
I'm all out of projectiles.
What else do I got? I use the guns, I use the glaive, I use the stakes, I have the sword. So he knocks the glaive or the gun out of Blade's hand with the glaive that he stole from him. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You have to remember, like, there's fire everywhere. Fire everywhere.
Blade doesn't give a shit about fire.
Yeah, he does.
Well, like he can still burn and
Yeah,
stuff.
he's in pain. He's in pain.
Yeah, but he heals pretty quick. So it's just a flesh wound. It's just a minor burn.
Well, his body is too busy healing itself to be paying as closely attention to Azrael and his attacks as it should be.
I'm trying to figure out how Blade can get through
Armor?
Azrael's armor. Like, it's not that durable, right? I mean, like, eventually
No, I mean, yeah, it's really durable.
he's gonna have to target the back of his head then or something.
I mean, it's not
Because
unpenetrable.
it's unfortunate that he has bladed weapon. Like, the bladed weapons won't necessarily get through a metallic armor. Like if it was Kevlar,
Like slashing weapons, right?
Yeah, slash and stab weapons. That's what armor is made for, you know.
Right.
So that's a little rough. Yeah. You want to take this to the stats?
Because you give up?
Do you have?
Because you give up?
No, I don't give up. No, I just already know that Blade already killed Azrael with a stake to the back of the head. And he was like, "Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill," and then stabs him in the back of the head.
What does that even mean? It just sounds cool saying it, so you could say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to the stats.
All right, we'll go to the stats. We'll be right back.
Gregorian chants always reminded me of Monty Python.
It's true. When they hit themselves on the head with the board.
Yeah. Jesu Domine. Whack. Dona eis requiem. I think that's... that was just off the top of my head.
That was pretty good.
Damn, I'm
We
good.
haven't seen that movie in decades.
Yeah, seriously.
Decades.
Decades.
One decade.
Not that old.
Yeah, we're not that old. All right. So we ran 1,000 simulations, putting their stats together. The stats were interesting because a lot of them came out closer than what I thought they would be. It was mainly being like, oh yeah, Blade's way better at this. And then Jonathan going, no, he's just as good. And then me going, no, shut up, you're stupid. And then him going, no, look. And things like that.
Yeah, we determined that Blade is faster in short bursts because he could essentially almost like teleport
Yeah,
in
almost.
a way.
Yeah. Azrael is stronger.
Yeah, he's stronger.
Apparently.
But
That surprised me.
barely, though. His insanity was a bigger detriment than I thought it was going to be,
Right.
which makes me kind of sad because he's definitely not as intelligent as Batman, but he is, he does have that conditioning that essentially just makes him a perfect weapon. Unfortunately, he is once again prone to hallucinations and stuff like that. So it's unfortunate, and it hindered him in these stats, I think.
How confident are you feeling right now?
Not as confident as I was earlier, because I was like, fucking Azrael could do anything Blade can do, and he wears armor. But
There was one thing that he couldn't do, which is shoot guns.
yeah.
That ended up being a factor in this as well.
And I'm not going to pretend like, Azrael doesn't get tagged occasionally, because, I've seen him bleed for sure. But no, I'm curious to see what the results are for sure.
All right. Okay, so the winner of the Azrael Blade dynamic duel is Azrael.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. It's
No. Oh, you asshole.
I do that to you all the time the other way around.
I hate you.
It's Blade.
Whatever.
Blade won.
Not by much.
Blade won 596% or 596 battles out of 1,000, which is 59.6%. And yeah, the guns played a huge factor in this.
That's fucked up. I mean, I don't think they would play that big of a role in this match. I mean, Azrael has taken on guys like Deathstroke and Batman and Bane and beaten them.
You say that there's nothing that Blade can do to Azrael, but what can Azrael do to Blade, considering his healing factor, his speed, and all that stuff? It's a close match. I mean, 59.6 isn't that high. It's not as high as the last match. So this is not too bad for you, right? I mean,
oh, dude, I'm still sad. I'm heartbroken. You broke my heart.
It's what I do. It's what Marvel does. They stomp on DC characters. That's what they're good at.
No, they don't.
They stomp on DC characters and they know things. They have the T-shirt that says that. That's what they do. Anyway,
I've never seen that shirt. I have no idea what you're talking about.
you know what that's a reference to?
No.
Okay, never mind then. All right, that does it for this episode. Don't forget to answer our question of the week, which was basically who do you think has the best live action costume in the Marvel and DC films? Follow us on social media and Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Search for Dynamic Duel Podcast. Buy our cool ass T-shirt designs by going to TeePublic. We have a link on our website, which is dynamicduel.com. So if you want to check out those sweet ass T-shirts, go to dynamicduel.com.
Honestly, if you go to our website, like we have links to our podcast, to our merchandise, to everything.
Our social.
So it's all there.
Social media.
Yeah.
Not social security number.
What?
I don't know.
No, I thought you're the only one.
Okay. Next episode, we will be kicking off Black History Month by doing a review of the first Blade movie. And super excited for that, especially since Blade is he's a winner in my book.
It's been a long time since I saw the movie.
It's good.
Forget the director's name.
Steve Norrington.
Steve Norrington. He's just a fantastic director.
Yeah, he is.
He's really good. So
really is.
Stylized.
Don't count League of Extraordinary Gentlemen against him.
Yeah, totally.
But so looking forward to that, and we will talk to you guys in a week.
Yep. Up and away.
True believers.